Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, and we hope that this is just a really good night for you, for your family, and just on behalf of our Youth Ministries Department and our Children's Ministry Department, as we see our role with working with your students, you are our greatest resource. You are our partner, and it's part of our job that we get to do, that we get to encourage you and equip you, so we're hoping that this is a big part of that for you tonight. I know I've got some parents, you can go ahead and click. Some parents that are here, it's confirmation, it's parents' night for you. If you're here and you want to make sure that your kids get credit for your attendance being here tonight, I'm going to just ask that you text. If you could text Mandy from the East Campus, you can see her number up there, or Grant for the West Campus. Let them know that you're here. That's a little different than how we normally do it, but we don't have our small groups tonight to take attendance. So if you could let them know that you're coming and just tell them your name and your son or daughter's name, that would be great. And then if you are here and you've got children that are here and you haven't yet brought them, we do have childcare. Childcare will run about 10-15 minutes after this session ends, so you can go down to the far end of the building and utilize that. And if you have kids there, we'll try to end that time about 15 minutes after this has ended as well. For junior high and high school age parents, just two things just to remind you. We've got our all-nighter coming up in a couple weeks. Our early bird discount, it expires after tomorrow, so if you want to save $10, just encourage you to register by tomorrow. We've got 42 students that have paid registered and another 40 that haven't just yet. And then Senior High Winter Weekend Confirmation Camp, they are coming up very soon as well, and registration is open for them as well. I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to introduce to you our speaker. Father, thank you. Thank you for tonight. Thank you for each family, each home, each child that's represented here. I pray for Tiger as he gets to share with us. I pray that you would just speak through him. Open our ears, open our hearts to hear the wisdom that you've put on his heart. And I pray that it would be a blessing to the families that are here. Pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. I'll just tell you just a little bit about our speaker. When I was in college, that was 25 years ago, chapel speaker was Tiger. I went to Christian College in the cities. And I heard Tiger, and I was like, wow, he did a really good job. I was really impressed with it. In fact, after I graduated, I knew that Tiger taught at Bethel Seminary as an adjunct professor, so I said, let me take a couple more classes. So I went on and I had Tiger for a few more classes there as well. And I just looked back at the time and I thought, all right, Tiger, you played a role in keeping me in seminary, so thank you for that. I'll tell you a little bit more about Tiger, though. Tiger has been on staff as the Executive Director of Youth Leadership. He just retired this fall, but he was there for, 30 years probably? 29 years. And as he was there, he oversaw what they do. They do a lot of resources and just encouraging churches as they equip parents. He presented probably hundreds or thousands of seminars to churches to equip parents, just like we're going to have tonight. And as well, he taught at Bethel and Luther Seminary in the cities at the same time. In addition, he's a parent, he's a grandfather, he's a husband, and he served in the local church as a pastor, youth worker, different roles like that. So again, I want to welcome Tiger, and the rest of the time is all yours. So thank you.
Thank you. There was a mic drop right there. That was good. Good strategy, Mark, to put the comfortable chairs up front and the metal chairs in the back. That was good planning. I appreciate a chance to be here. We were talking as we're getting ready, and for some reason in my head I had about an hour and a half together, and they said no, it's closer to a little over an hour. So this will be a little bit like drinking from a fire hydrant. If you're a note taker, you might get frustrated because I might be jumping a little bit, but I want to throw out some ideas because I never quite know what it is that would be most helpful, and I've got this a framework around some thoughts about parenting. And so let me just get a sense of your context. How many of you are parenting a child birth to 2 years old? Birth to 2, okay? Sleeping well and having lots of free time, right? How about 2 to 5? 2 to 5, group of you in the room. How about 5 to 10? So you're just hold your hands out. That's good. And how about 10 to 15? All right, that early adolescence. And then 15 to 20. You and anyone over age of 21. Emerging adulthood, yes. That's a wide range. So we are going to try to, obviously we can't do particulars for each age group, but I want to give you some ideas for you to then take back and think about, etc. So, as you said, I've been working in youth leadership, teaching, etc., doing a youth ministry deal. I always say that I used to be, when I was in youth ministry, I was young, cool, and relevant, because I hung out with teenagers and I had a lot of lock-ins. But I always bring a picture to prove that I used to be young, cool, and relevant. You can find the cool youth director in that picture. I didn't know much about Jesus, so I tried to look like him. That's all I had. That's all I had going for me. And I loved hanging around kids, and for some reason, God has continued over these last 45 years to keep telling me that that's where I'm supposed to hang out, although the image is very different now. When I'm now in a room full of people who care about the next generation, or a room full of teenagers, I'm almost always the oldest one in the room, which is getting fairly depressing. But that context of being with the next generation all of my adult life is what I'll share some thoughts and observations that come out of that experience. I also have experience of obviously being a parent, and so this is a card that I got from my middle daughter, Mandy, a year or two ago. And I give it to you partly to introduce my family, but also, if I have time at the end, I'll tell you why this particular card means so much to me, because some of you, if you're parenting pre-adolescent or adolescents, you know that can be a chapter in there that can be a little stressful. And Mandy was my child that, as a parenting seminar person, was the one that kept haunting me because it wasn't going well at home. We struggled. So for her to say this, thanks for showing us what a great marriage looks like, meant a lot, because there's a lot of recovery behind that simple statement that I won't talk all about. But let me introduce you. So there's my wife. Soon I'm married 42 years. We got married, we had no clue. I don't know if some of you were smarter than me, but I had no clue what I was getting into. And then about 5 years later, let's start with my youngest daughter. This is Bree. Bree is adopted from Korea. And Bree is the drama queen of the world. If you have one of these, this girl everything is dramatic, everything's big, it's exciting, it's the best ever, or it's horrible, and it's the worst ever, and very verbal. She wants to talk about it. A lot. Okay? So that was, parenting that was like, oh my gosh. She was having a good day that day, so we took a picture. And little Carter. And so that drama queen, verbal, then we go to my middle daughter, Mandy, who is take that emotion to this. Borderline obsessive compulsive, very organized, very in charge, very much knows what she wants, has an opinion. You will hear her opinion, whether you want to or not. And she'll tell you the truth. You'd never walk away from a conversation from Mandy going, I wonder what she thinks. As a parent of a teenager, that was also a lot of fun. And so she got married to Jeremy a few years ago at the wedding. I handed the baton off to him and said, good luck with that, pal. And so her two little boys there. And then my oldest son, in whom I'm mostly pleased, is Ryan. Ryan was your monosyllabic boy. You have one of these, the grunting, eating, bodily function noises guy. I mean, he didn't really talk much. He just wanted to eat a lot, through adolescence. And so, he got married to Laura, and she's helping him with sentence structure, which is really kind of fun. So now I hear nouns and verbs in the same sentence as a dad. I start to cry. It's so emotional for me. But he now has two girls. So we have two boys, two girls. And then my oldest daughter, Sharon, is, I think, like 48, I think. I lose track after a while. Some of you didn't pay attention. I've been married how long? 42. You do the math. Not a biological child. Sharon is a foster daughter we adopted into our family when she was in high school. And I learned a lot about parenting by being a youth worker and watching some of you parents do an incredible job parenting. And I've also watched a lot of parents just give up on parenting, and this was one example, a really sad story of her. And we got to know her. She had not heard anything about this gospel that we talk about in church so easily. It changed her life. And when we heard her story that she was living at the YWCA in the city, I was doing youth ministry in Duluth, Minnesota, trying to ride a city bus, finishing high school on her own, we felt God tell us to bring her into a family. We invited her in, and she's been a part of our family ever since. So I have a kind of a messy family, but it's great. We now have a mob of them together. Here's what I want to tell you here. Because I have this context, I am not going to stand here tonight to tell you that I'm an expert on parenting. The reason I can't do that is because they might be watching on Facebook and they know it's not true, right? They've told me it's not true. I know it's not true. You ever worry about that when you go to a parenting seminar or a marriage seminar and you worry about in the presentation you're going to only walk away feeling guilty, like you're not as good as you should be because you're really horrible? I did a marriage seminar with my wife a number of years ago. I thought I'm going to earn brownie points. It's going to be great. I'm going to take it. I signed it up and we went. And the problem with the seminar was that it was Mr. and Mrs. Perfect doing the seminar. Have you been to one of these? Where everything, like this couple is talking and everything is great and they communicate like really well and they know their love language and they do it and, you know, all their kids are missionaries and, you know, they pray at night every night and, you know, they have family devotions are awesome and they've written a couple's devotional Bible and, you know, they look at each other like they're in love all the time. The sex is great all the time and they wanted to talk about it in public. I'm like, this is horrible. My wife looked at me halfway through the seminar and said, I didn't realize what a jerk you were until I came to the seminar. Now I'm incredibly disappointed. So I'm going to not try to play that card with you because that's not who I am. What I am is a person who loves the challenge that you have signed on for, whether you knew what you were signing on for or not, which is to raise a child in this culture, in this generation, in this world. It's a challenging task. And what I do know about parenting is it makes you act weird. We didn't know that it would, but a little video for you to see what I mean.
If I ain't got you, ain't got, baby, you don't know what it's like. Baby, you don't know what it's like to love somebody, the way I love you.
You just don't know what you get signed up for. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a couple frame of reference, some ideas, some things I think are important to maybe talk about when we leave this room. Let me be honest about three things that I've come to know about you as a parent. You might be the rare exception, and if you are, God bless you, just don't tell me about it. But I think most of us in this room, if we're honest, we can admit three things that are true about us. Number one is we're untrained for the job we have. In other words, we really don't know what we're doing. Our kids are not here to tell them. We don't know, right? I mean, women, you're way ahead of us. You had social skills and all that kind of stuff. But most of us don't have a clue what we really are signing on for. And you remember you made your first child and you brought that child to nursery and they said, oh, is this your first child? And you said yes, and they gave you that look like, oh, honey, you are really in the, you know, and you kind of knew, everyone knew that you didn't know, right? And that's okay. Let me just give you a unscientific proof of that. How many of you are the oldest child in your family of origin? Raise your hand, look around the room, look up, raise your hand proudly. These are bitter people. Right? Because your parents changed the rules on you, your younger brother and sister, didn't they? And you're still wanting to go to therapy about that. Get over it. It's okay. But that's because your parents didn't know what they were doing either. And then you were the guinea pig. Like, well, we're going to try a lot of rules on that one. Well, that didn't work out so well. Let's try this. How many of you are the youngest child in your family of origin? Yeah, me too. Woo-hoo. It's like, we slid under the radar. Or, I was the fourth out of 4 children. 4 years between me and my brother. I was an accident. My parents were fairly catatonic. Curfew was a suggestion. Rules were just an idea. If I didn't blow something up, I pretty much was fine, My brother was mad all the time watching me because I was just kind of doing fine. But the difference was when my oldest brother graduated, my mom had collected a memory book that's sick of everything he did, said, looked at, touched, drew, wrote, anything, and handed to him, and it was like a monument. Mine was 3 pictures the neighbors took. I walked in the room, my dad said, Tiger, you're walking. I said, Dad, I'm 4. Pay attention, okay? See, so there's a plus and minus. We're untrained for this job, and I get it. Here's the difference. This is really an important difference. Is that when we were at the beginning of the journey, we sort of knew what we didn't know, and everybody sort of knew, and we didn't feel bad about that. But then you go through the period of, I almost call it the honeymoon period of parenting, which is somewhere around 2 to 10 or 12, depending on the personality of your child, where you're sort of figured out, and you sort of have some routines, and you're sort of in charge, and they sort of like you, and you got some things figured out, and you create the illusion that you got this thing, and then puberty comes, and adolescence comes, and middle adolescence comes, and all of a sudden you're as untrained for this chapter of parenting. The difference is it's harder to admit it. So let me just suggest something that will end up at the end. Healthy families are the ones who are willing to admit, I don't know what I'm doing. And turn to each other and use this church and other people and friends and neighbors and extended family as a resource, rather than feel like you're the only one that doesn't know what to do, because we all don't. So that's just one little word. We're untrained for the job. Visual people hate me on this one, but this is called bad parenting. Now, no ducks were harmed in the filming of this. They all rescued. But that's sort of the oldest child knows this. I was the one that they trusted over the gate and said, great, and said, well, that's a bad idea. So we don't know what we're doing. So here's the second thing. We're tired. Right? And I can just hear the people going, yeah, all right, I know. And it's a different kind of tired, depending on the chapter of parenting. In those early stages, where a lot of my kids are, it's just physical tiredness because you don't sleep and they are up late and their routines are, they just. But then they get into the elementary, late elementary, middle school, and now it's busyness tired, physical tiredness, running around tiredness. And then you get into the puberty thing and adolescence, and now you have a brain tired. Because now you have to think all the time, and they love to suck the brain out of your head in arguments that make no sense, but they think that really they're being witty, and it drives you crazy. So you're continually tired in some way, shape, or form. And again, when you don't know what you're doing, you act kind of weird. You try something, and then you try something else, and when you're tired, you've heard your own lecture. When you need to take more sleep, because when you get enough sleep, you're really crabby and overreactive. You say that to your child, right? And then we live in perpetual tiredness. It makes us potentially crabby and overreactive. So we're untrained, we're tired. So far, really positive seminar. And the third thing is we're scared. I know we're all scared. We're scared of not doing a good job. I know every one of you are here because you care deeply about your kids and you want them to do well. And at the beginning, it's a little easier. But we're scared of not doing a good job. We're scared of maybe we don't know what we're doing. We're going to hurt our kids. We're going to make the right choice. We're going to overprotect, underprotect, overrule, underrule, whatever. Those three realities are the backdrop to this. Untrained, tired, scared, and maybe just admitting that will be a beginning first step. Another thing is to take a look at the context you and I live in. Again, it's going to be short. I want to just mention a couple things. I'm hearing two key words when I talk to parents. And by the way, pastors, youth workers, everybody. Two key words I hear over and over. One is complicated. It is more complicated than ever before to do this thing called parenting, to do this thing called grandparenting, to do this thing called ministry, to do this thing called church. It's just complicated in today's world, isn't it? And it's only getting more complicated. We're just unsure. It isn't clear. It's messy. We don't have a lot of territory. Just talking with a couple staff about things have changed so fast that we don't quite know what to do yet or how to do things because it's complicated out there. The second word I hear a lot is discouraged. For parents and grandparents and ministry leaders and pastors, I hear more and more people when we get honest, discouragement. I'm not sure. How are we doing? What are the markers and how do I know? Those two words are kind of out of this untrained, tired, and scared. And we also are facing a critical decade, is what I call this decade. Some of you are on the front side of this decade. Some of you are in the middle of it. Some of you have kids on the other side of it. The critical decade, in my estimation, is the 10-year period between 13 and 23 years old, which is where we will find out, as parents and as churches, whether the fruits of our effort take root in their life. In that she's talking about the seed, either being blown away by the wind or choked by the cares and concerns of the world or bearing fruit. This decade will tell us whether what we do is bearing fruit or whether it's being choked by the cares and concerns of the world or it's blown away because it has no roots. And what we're finding, depending on the study, that there is a significant dropout rate. Somewhere, depending on who you talk to, and we're still trying to figure it out, somewhere between 40 to 60% maybe of the kids who come to youth group, by the time they exit the critical decade, are disengaged from faith, life, church, and God. And that's a huge statistic to me that worries me. And what it tells us is that we have to be really planning what is it we have before the decade occurs, during the decade, and what we can do as churches and parents to share faith and invest in them so that the message takes root in their life. Not every kid drops out, but too many drop out and disengage. And I know that you all are sitting here hoping your kid is not that statistic, right? I know that. I can just make this assumption. That you hope your kids turn out well. You hope your kids make it. Whatever that means for you, that their faith is intact, that they stay engaged, that they're healthy. And I know that you hope that, but I want to use a phrase that I say a lot to remind us of something, and that is this, that hope is not a strategy. God bless you for the feeling, but I do this not to put pressure on any of you, but to name what's true, and that is that we, meaning parents and churches together, have to be more intentional and strategic than ever before if we're going to share the gospel with the next generation in such a way that it embeds into who they are, they shapes their identity, and it allows them to grow into the person God has created them to be. And that's going to require strategy. So I'm going to give you some ideas today that could lend itself to some strategy. I can't give you 5 easy steps on how to do this. I can't guarantee that it will work. But I want to give you some thoughts on how to do this because hope is not a strategy. In the process of this, what I find a lot, especially as we get into this critical decade, is there is a lie that's being perpetuated out there in the culture. And that is that you don't matter anymore. If you're parenting a 15-year-old, you're not. It's let the kids rule the roost. Almost every media portrayal of parents is we are less equipped, stupider than the kids, let the kids make the decision because they know better. And I just want to suggest that that's a lie that you might not want to listen to. Because like it or not, and I say this when kids are present, your kids follow your footprints in significant ways. You are the most important spiritual influence on their life. Doesn't guarantee that they'll follow your footprints, but they tend to. Study after study shows this. Parents affect, it's true for all my kids, not all positive, but it's true. So a little brain break here. I want to show you this little video of a father-son influence. Watch the power of the father, the proud father knowing he has influence on his son, and watch the influence of the son in a Britain's Got Talent dance competition. Watch the judges go from bored to fully engaged with this father-son.
Ladies and gentlemen, many years ago in Cyprus lived a man who loved to dance. He would dance for the villagers, and the villagers loved to watch him dance. Well, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, here for one night only, would you please welcome Mr. Stavros Flatley.
We have to know that that's true. Don't let the culture tell you it's not true, and leverage it as much as you can for as long as you can. Because it's one of the things that parents sometimes give up too soon on, and we still have this influence. All of my kids are adult children. I love the relationship I have with my adult children, and we'll talk about this, that I have a voice still in their life. It's called an opinion. That's all it is. I have no power, I have no control, but I have an opinion. And I still believe that opinion has influence because of the relationship we have, but it's just simply an opinion. And so we ought to pay attention to that and pay attention to the context of the culture that you and I live in. I'm going to frame this up and then we'll pick up some ideas of strategy. You and I live in an incredibly busy, distracting, high-paced change culture. There's a whole lot of stuff we could do with this. But let's just say, I'm not a culture basher. I'm not suggesting we go Amish. If you want to, great, go for it. But most of us have to be very honest to know that this culture that you and I are parenting in, one of the reasons why we have to be more strategic than ever is because the culture we live in. You may agree, you may not agree, that's okay. But this core parenting value is, for me, a major issue in the way in which we're parenting and what it's doing to this whole adolescence and extension from adolescence, etc. But and the way you check out, every culture has a core value that basically says, if you're a parent in this culture, this is your primary job, Mom and Dad. This is what you're supposed to be. This is what you're supposed to do, right? You don't see it on the wall, no billboards on the highway, but you'll see it in the way you experience the culture. Let me give you a couple examples. If you were to go to Japan, I think, and you would ask a Japanese parent, I want my child to be, I think they would say something close to successful. They might say, well, it's in Japanese, but it would be translated successful. Meaning, since World War II, that culture has said, Mom and Dad, your top job is to ensure that this next generation is a success. They work hard, they honor the family, they do good, and they do it well. You're successful. And they put a lot of pressure on the next generation. In fact, it's called cocooning, where kids in that culture try to push away from that pressure. But the fact is, everything else doesn't matter as important. It's the potatoes, gravy is everything else. Don't worry about that. You must make sure your child is a success. And since World War II, how have they done? They've done very well, haven't they? In creating a culture of success. You go to Korea, where my daughter's adopted from. We went there when she was about 12 or 13. Immediately, within a day, I could tell you what the core parenting value in Korea is I want my child to be educated. Not negotiable, folks. It is written and unwritten everywhere. Mom and Dad, your job is to make sure this child has an education and does well in school and continues on in school and goes to university, because education is the marker of whether you've done your job well. And if that's not the marker you have, you've missed the boat. The pressure is to be that, right? America has adopted a core parenting value. You hear it. When you ask the average American family parent, what do you want my child to be? They would say, I want my child to be happy. Therein, I would suggest, is the downfall of American culture. Because when I was growing up, my parents wanted me to be good. They didn't care if I was happy. In fact, they pretty much ensured I wasn't going to be happy. They didn't care. I couldn't play any card with my parents that got me on this, because I'm not, if I came in, I'm not happy, I'm bored, it's so stupid. It didn't work. Why? Because that was not on the screen. It was, you're going to be a good kid, defining what that means. We've slipped into this idea that your job, Mom and Dad, is to ensure that your child is happy. And I just want to ask you a question. How are we doing? Can you give me any sociological indicator that says we are raising a happier generation today than a generation ago, or the one before that, or the one before that, or the one before that? And I can't find one. If that's true, I can find markers in Korea that tell me that that goal is being met. I can find markers in Japan that says that goal is being achieved. I can't find any markers in America that says that goal is being achieved. So either the goal is the problem, or the methodology we're using to get there is the problem. I think it's a combination. So we struggle with this idea of what does that look like? We live in this world of distraction, busyness, and this core parenting value that says your job is to make them happy, and if they're not happy, man, what do? And we've all heard it, right, as parents, and it pushes buttons in us. And part of it is the culture around us buys into this value as well, and whenever I speak to kids, I always do this on Friday night. I'll speak at a middle school gathering, and I will lay these four out, because middle school kids will tell me, this is my world. and you've helped me name it so that I can at least talk about it. And that is that the culture says you want to be happy, you want to feel good about yourself, students, you want to feel like you matter, you feel like you're going to be okay, you feel like you're going to be significant. And part of that happiness, by the way, is this mantra we have in America, which also I have to just throw out here, Bill. There's a dark side to this one. That is, you can be anything you want. Just be anything. Sounds so good at the front. I think it sounds good at the front side, but on the dark side is, how do you figure out what you are when you're 13 and you can be anything? And again, I'm not suggesting we go back to this, but it was a culture where you were defined fairly clearly. You grew up in a small town, your dad owned the hardware store, you were going to own the hardware store because that's what you were. And in today's world, when anything is a possibility, it gets harder and harder, and we'll talk about this, to formulate a clear sense of what my purpose is, what my sense of value is, and how I'm going to be happy in the midst of that. So the 4 Ps says the way you get happy is to look good, personal looks, and with kids we're going to unpack this in a lot of different ways, but I always say to kids, by the way, this is not a youth issue, this is an American cultural issue. Because these 4 Ps are true for all of us in this room as well. True for people of all ages. Also, you got to perform a certain way to impress a certain group of people depending on who you're trying to impress. Some of your kids will choose athletics, some will choose other sports, music, theater, being the social clown, being the high risk taker, being the party kid. They may choose healthy or unhealthy methodologies, but what they're trying to do is say, if I perform to your standards, then you're going to tell me that I'm okay. Because I don't know if I'm okay until you tell me I look good enough, or you tell me that I perform good enough. Which is why so many kids on a Friday night don't give up on truth. They simply so much want someone to tell them they're okay that they'll do almost anything. They'll perform in a number of ways, and that person will say, if you do that, I'll notice you, I'll find you special, or I will love you. Because it drives us all. Thirdly, popularity, hanging around the right people, or a person. Just get the right person, one person to notice me, then I'll be okay. When I say this to these middle school kids and high school kids, I say, the idea is that if you get that, then now you can put your head on the pillow at night and just be so good. You're okay. And then the last one is possessions. Have the right stuff. Again, this is not a teenager. This is an American cultural issue. And we could spend more time and unpack this, but what I want to just throw out for you to consider is that this idea is getting at us. And by the way, I'm just a guy who's observed this. But then I noticed that people who spend millions of dollars to get us to buy stuff, their profits are based on their intuitive ability to spot what's going on in culture and push the right buttons, and they're starting to come alongside with me, which is, I feel kind of affirmed by this. Watch this. We have people who spend millions, like Best Buy, ad campaign a few years ago, You Happier. That's great. You go to Best Buy, you'll be happier than when you walked in. Huh. I'll say this to kids, you want to buy me a TV? That's great, I'll be happy for a while. But if my happiness is based on the size of my TV, I'm skating on very thin ice. It just doesn't work. And I was reminded, just look west to Hollywood. The names will change, but here's what Hollywood tells us really well. You can have any and all of the 4 Ps, and your life can still be miserable. You can be on your 4th marriage, you can be strung out, you can kill yourself. Because for some reason, the 4 Ps get really close. They don't get at the real thing. Best Buy knows it. I'm a Coke addict. I'm not a Coke addict. I'm a Coca-Cola addict. Why bother with Pepsi? But see, this is their opening. Really, I just had a Coke for supper, but I'm not sure it transformed my life into a happy life. But they're not trying to do it objectively. They're trying to do it very subtly because this culture says our job is to be happy. And our kids begin to see it. So then, Holiday even got into this. 99 cents, you can be happy. Whatever makes you happy, this is great. You know, my wife and I are going on vacation in a week or so. We're going somewhere warm, and that's great. My wife is happy at the beach. But we live in Minnesota, North Dakota. I mean, that's depression 9 months out of the year if that's the only way you're going to be happy. So, VW, get in, get happy. Even Walgreens get at the corner of happy and healthy. So on your outline is just this question of, do you see these 4 Ps? Maybe have conversations with other people. How do they do it? How do they manage in their family? Do they raise the question of this? Let's focus on happiness. If happiness is not it, then my question would be, so what would you say? There's no one guaranteed answer, but what if you think that might be We might be swinging and missing at that one. What might you say? And that might be a good conversation for people to have. Okay? Does that make sense? That's the framework of this context. It's changing, it's rapid, it's noisy, it's distracting. We're going to do a whole seminar on technology and all that kind of stuff. But that happiness thing is a backdrop to us and maybe worth having consideration. So, then you have to work on knowing your kids in that context, right? Your particular kids and adolescents. I love this picture. This is called Only in Middle School. I love middle school kids, by the way, and it makes me very abnormal. Because this is the kind of kid that drives most people nuts. I mean, oh, where'd I go? Where'd he go? You know, the teacher's giving a lecture on an important thing like Civil War, and he's thinking, I can stick my head through that chair. And you're like, you really? He disrupts the whole class, carries him down. Again. He doesn't want to stay on him. And so now we have 4 employees cutting the chair off. There you go. Cutting the chair off with a hacksaw. Notice they've given him a sucker as a reward for it. I love that kid. So, a couple things about when you're moving. Some of you are pre-adolescent, but if you move into adolescent, let me give you a couple. This will be a quick list. So messier, longer, and riskier than ever before. And I don't do this to get you freaked out. We just know that adolescence used to be 13 to 19, 6 years big in early, late adolescence, junior high and senior high. Hard, but you can hang in there. Now it's, depending on who you talk to, it's somewhere around 11 years long. It starts about 10 or 11, goes to about 22. 3 stages of adolescence. It's a whole other seminar we could do to prep you for what that looks like. And then there's a 4th category called emerging adulthood, which is the journey after adolescence at 22, somewhere between 22 and 28 or 40 if you're a male, you finally make it into adulthood. It's this emerging adult on-ramp. It's longer, it's messier, and it's riskier than ever before. And we have to therefore not just hope that our kids can navigate it, but continue to do it. It is about technology. That's about another seminar, but it is, the reality is that shapes everything in our world. It's also about the brain development. It's a whole other deal about brain development. But let me just give you 2 visuals that will maybe help you when you go home if you're having a conversation with a pre-adolescent or an adolescent. And that is you all have fancy words, but I'm going to give you the 3-minute brain development theory that will change your life. I've always wanted to say that. All kinds of fancy words. I'm going to call 2 parts of your brain that you're most going to be aware of. One is called the mammalian part of the brain. It's right back here. It's where all the emotion is. It's where your kid goes, oh, that is awesome. I have a skateboard. I can go down that hill. That would be great. See, this part of the brain is on fire for adolescents. This is working really well. This is why YouTube is filled with stupid teenagers doing dumb stuff, because this is the only part of the brain that works. And they're like, oh yeah, video this, I'm going to jump off the roof into the garbage can. And everyone who has this part of the brain, called the frontal lobe, looks at it and goes, that's not going to go well. It's called delayed gratification, decision making, being smart. So when your kid says these grand statements come out of here, interpretive statements come out of here, everyone hates me comes out of here, you're yelling at me all the time, Mom, comes out of here. If nothing else, just put your hand in your own head and take a breath. Because this part of the brain is on fire and we have to keep it going. Our job, as we prepare them for adulthood, is to begin to wire it from here to here. That's why it's taking longer, because in a search for happiness, where does happiness reside? Right here. I feel happy. And so if we are only wiring, and the brain development theory says you wire what you turn on and turn off. And if you're only wiring this, you're only going to get more of this. So there's a whole lot to it, but just take a breath when you hear it. You're going to hear it. It's just on fire. And then our job is to get them to begin to interpret, wonder, talk about, have a conversation, slow down, wonder, is that a good idea, etc. It's also about identity. It's a basic question we've asked for you. Who am I and whose am I? Remember, when all the options are harder to decide. Well, this is who I am. We have a theology that's very clear about this, about who we are in the eyes of God, as a child of God. Why does the Bible repeat that imagery a lot? Because that identity is essential framework for everything else. As kids develop with all the other options, then who am I is really a critical piece. It's also sometimes a time to hang on. I get it. I've lived through 4, and I love them, but at times it can be a time of struggle. Behind all of that, I'm going to give you 3 basic needs. Don't ever forget them. Write them down. Think about it all the time. Watch your kids, because it's more than happiness. It's more than them feeling this part of the brain. And it is both this part of the brain and it's this part of the brain understanding 3 basic things, and that is every need. Every child needs to know they're loved, they're valuable, and they're not alone. Every one of us in this room, by the way, need to know we're loved, we're valuable, and we're not alone. That someone finds us uniquely special. I say the job of non-family or family and non-family adults is when the child walks in the room, they light up in a non-creepy way. In a really healthy way, they light up and go, oh, I'm so glad you're here. Because don't we all, most of us are fairly mature adults here, don't we all want that? To have someone, when we walk in the room, notice us, find us special. If you're 13, that's a desperation call. That middle school kid is dying to, maybe I'll stick my head through the chair, then someone will like me. And we didn't we all try dumb stuff to try to get people to notice us? But it's because we want to know someone loves us, someone who's going to find us uniquely special. And then we have value to the deal. We add value to the room, we add value to the meeting, we add value to the home, we add value to the world around us. Kids are searching for ways to find the answer to that. How do I add value? And so much of what they do doesn't help with that. We have to help them with that. And that they're not alone. The fear of many of us in this culture, the fear of many children and kids that can't articulate it, is a survivor world. I'm going to get voted off the island. I'm it all by myself. If I don't do this right, I'm going to get rejected. And in the social media world, you can feel rejection 24/7. Not just in the lunchroom that some of us felt when we were in junior high for an hour or half an hour, or when someone walked by and said something bad about us all the time. And that fear of being alone drives us to do crazy things sometimes. And we need places, we need people who say this. We need grandparents, we need parents, we need family members, we need parents, we need non-family members to say to the next generation that they're loved, they're valuable, and not alone. We're with you. We also need places like a church, a youth group, a small group, a peer group, hopefully, a team, where the group says, you're part of us and we like you here. We think you add to this group, and you're never alone because you're part of us. We all want to be in gangs. Here's what gangs do to kids. They say these 3 things. You're special. You're going to have value because you're going to contribute to this gang, and we're going to never let you go. And that is so strong that it's a great attraction for a lot of kids. So we need individuals who speak it, we have groups who speak it, and let's not forget our theology. This is what the gospel is, folks. This is love, not that you first loved God, but that God first loved you and sent Jesus as an atoning sacrifice for your sins. We got to remind kids of that. That love is unrelenting, pursuing, full of grace. You can't earn it, but you can never run away from it. It's constantly coming after you. And that you have value. Before I was even formed in my mother's womb, you knew me. And you've given me gifts to make a difference in the world around me. I want kids to hear that message because it's part of the gospel. And that you're never alone. Joshua 1:9, don't be terrified, don't be dismayed, don't be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. You are never, ever out of the reach of this God we talk about. We have to parent with that alongside a church that's going to continue to tell us that, because that's the 3 needs every one of our kids. And that's beyond happiness. I do a seminar called Finding God in the Midst of Storms, and we talk about how we find these needs met in the midst of the storms of life that throw all the happiness out the window with disappointment. But God is bigger than that. So, with that, and the fire hydrant's ready, let me throw a few ideas for you to consider. The D6 challenge is just the framework of this. We'll do this super quick. Because I love this text about these commandments I give to you today upon your hearts. The Lord your God is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. Then it says impress or teach these things to your children. Talk about that when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, and lie down, when you get up. The Deuteronomy chapter 6 is a great text. Really quickly mention these things. They come out of there a lot. They can do more. But number 1, if you talk about faith in the next generation, it's always about the faith of the adults. The Bible's always telling it to adults. Remember, believe, make it be part of your life, and then pass it on. It's got to be part of our job. So therefore, there's a growth challenge in this text that says to me or to everyone else. It also says parents can't do this alone. This is not a parent's verse. Deuteronomy 6 was not a parent seminar like this. What Deuteronomy 6 was a Sunday morning sermon to the whole group. Both family members, non-family members heard this text. That you are all, as the body, as the family, as the extended family of faith, you all have a job to pass faith on to the next generation. Mom and Dad, you can't do it alone. American individualism is killing us. This idea that your job is to just pull it up and get in your house and do this thing and do all these, it's never been designed that way. Because one, we don't know what we're doing. We need other people. And we need the body to come alongside of us. It requires actions and intentionality. But it's all of us are part of the challenge. And so again, I'm going to be a long list, but I'm going to throw it out as a framework for these two things. I wish I could spend more time on these two, and I'll tell you why. But here are the 5 functions that I'm working on in terms of explaining what families are designed for. And here's the premise I'm going to give you. Number 1 and 2, you do not have to take a seminar on, and you do instinctively, right? You love and protect your child, right? Boom, got it, figured out. One day, there we go. Here's my contention. If you only go with what comes natural, you become unhelpful to their development as a young adult, as a person of faith, and a maturing person. You actually become unhelpful if you stick with 1 and 2 all the way through. Because protecting and loving is focused on, I want them to be happy, I want them to be protected, I want them to be happy, I just want to love them, I just want to know there's just some love. And at some point that becomes unhelpful. Every child is different, so I can't tell you what the exact age is, but you have to always be teaching. That's the fulcrum. And you kind of almost turn it out. Then you start living into modeling, which is harder than teaching, right? Show what it is that you want to see happen, and then send them. In other words, get rid of them. Your job is to get rid of them. Your job is not to raise children. I know some of you have 2, 3, and 4-year-olds. Don't look at that child and say, my job is to raise this child. It is to raise an adult. You have them as a child for a while. But the question you must ask is, when I'm done with them, what am I sending them out as, and what am I sending them out into? And that should be both terrifying, but also gives you a little perspective. It isn't just now, it's about sending them out. While you're doing that comes the other one that I'd love to have more time on, is the issue of power and control. The beginning of the journey, when you're back here, you have a lot of power and control. I know you 2-year-olds are not a straight line, but you have a lot of power and control. Somewhere during the journey, you have to start moving into a shared power and control model, and ultimately at some point, they're going to have their own control of their life, and you have nothing other than what I have, which is an opinion. If you don't plan for that, you will blink, and it'll be there sooner than you think. So you have to have a strategy of what does that mean? What does that look like to share power and control, to deal with it? And again, if we had more time, I'd like to give you some tools around that. I'm not setting up come back, but I love that power and control thing can be really helpful in helping you know that my job is to teach and model and then get rid of them. And we'll unpack that another time. But have a strategy with that. Remember, don't go just with instinctive, go towards a plan. And that means the third thing I say here is have a vision for your child. And here's my definition of vision. There's lots of fancy definition. Here it is. Bill Hybels, who pastors at a small church outside of Chicago, like 30,000 people, has a great definition. A vision is a picture of the future that produces passion. It's a picture of the future that produces passion. Vision for a church, but here I'm talking to parents. I would like you to wonder about this, your homework. Describe the picture of the future in your child's life that you would say, I'm in to make that. I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen. And if it is, I want them to be happy, be sure you define that so that you know if you're getting there. If it's something else, what is it? What's the vision of the future? Whether it's 18 when they're high school, or 22 when they're college, or 34 when they finally move out of your basement. I don't know when it is, but when you're done, what's your vision that says, that's my deal? That's what I get excited about. And with that, I'm going to suggest, it was going to come up later, but I'll suggest the assignment is write down 3 to 5 core values you hold about that vision, that description of your child, character traits that you want to work towards? What are 3 to 5? If you make 9 or 10, that's too many. If you make 1, that's too tight. Somewhere between 3 to 5 goals, character goals in your child's life that you would say, I'm going to do everything I can do to go head towards those goals. Because again, most of us are hoping our kids turn out okay or turn out well, and I hope your goal is more than they have a scholarship to college. That's not really it. What character traits? What were the things that, when you're going to be where I am? And when are you going to be able to go, I'm okay. Nobody's perfect, by the way. But I can sleep at night. None of my kids are perfect. We don't have a perfect relationship, but so just to throw this out, I'm going to give you 4 that we have. Not because I think they're the best, not because you have to have them, but only because if you're like me, sometimes I have trouble getting started with an assignment. Somebody will say an assignment like that, and I'm like, well, I don't know. So let me give you 4 that help shape me. Number one, the number one value I held is the way I described it, being a former youth pastor. As I said, I want each of my kids to have a personal relationship to God through Jesus. That my primary job, when all is said and done, is I want each of my kids to have a maturing faith in Jesus in a personal way that's not dependent upon me managing all this stuff. Let me just tell you that I can't tell you it's 100% done. I wish it were. It's not 100% done. But that still was a goal, and it still is my goal. And what do I pray about almost every day? Is that goal is, because that's the vision of the future that produces the greatest passion in me, is that my kids would come and have that relationship, that life-giving relationship with Jesus, period. That shaped a whole lot of things. Job decisions, sports decisions, families decisions, because that became the value that kept bumping up against, number one. Number two, I wanted them to be responsible people who took care of their decisions. I framed it in a different way, but basically, I'm big on responsibility. You're not a victim. This is part of life. This is what it looks like. If you fail, you accept it. If you whatever it looks like, you take it on. And so we had to work on that, think about that, and each kid learned it differently, and helped us with that in terms of being responsible for their own attitudes and gratitude and all that kind of stuff, and service. We talked about, I said I want to have a relationship with them when I'm done. And I had that because I watched a lot of parents not have that as a primary goal. And I watched my foster daughter, her dad didn't make that as a goal. And they have no relationship. And I thought, I don't want that. By the way, that one really challenged me more than I thought. I thought I threw it in there. Oh yeah, I'm just in a relationship with them. That really challenged me when I'm parenting teenagers, because sometimes you can parent so much around power and control that you break the relationship. And rules without relationship equals rebellion. So that one really challenged me a lot, more than I thought it would. It was just in my list, and it was the one that pushed me a lot. And the last one is that they'd be loved unconditionally, no matter what they did, that they were always part of this family, no matter what. Stir around whatever, but the issue is, picture your child whenever you're done, whatever that looks like, and say, these are the characteristic traits, this is the vision of the future that I'm saying, I'm going to work on. I'm going to do my best. Are you going to get there? Are you going to have 100%? No. But not having a goal ensures that you're not going to get there. So have a vision for your child in terms of what that looks like. And the way you do that is have a dream. You work towards that dream. You love them unconditionally in the midst of that dream, because they're imperfect and so are you. So have a vision, work towards it, okay? A couple more. While you're doing that, work on the word environment. Work on your environment in your family. Just ask the question, what's it like to be in this home? And sometimes that question I would ask, and it was a challenge, because sometimes we can get so caught in the stuff that we forget. By the way, loving environment is spelled T-I-M-E. It's the only way you get there. T-I-M-E. It takes time to make it happen. You got to learn to have fun, whatever that looks like. Every one of you will decide it differently, but having fun is important. We still, as our family, we have 2 times a year we call it the McLuhan National Holiday, because Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving, when you have older kids and they're married, and you split them sometimes, and they're going with the in-laws and they steal them and you're crabby and all that, So in addition, we'll take whatever we can get around normal holidays, but they're twice a year where it's a McLuhan National Holiday, non-negotiable. All 19 of us have to be there. And one is over President's Holiday in Wisconsin Dells, the other one's out summer up at our place. And we joke about that because we're just going to do that and have fun. Because we need to be together. And other than responsible stuff, just have fun. Everything else is on top of that. You have to listen to them in that environment. And by the way, a lot of times, parents, your kids want to be listened to at the time when you most are unprepared to listen, aren't they? You're doing dishes or getting something ready, and then the kid will go, "Can I ask you a question?" No, listening is a really important skill, and usually comes in times we're least prepared, or when we're most tired, like when we just come home from work, or we're ready to go to bed. We just go to bed. Just go to bed. But we have to listen to them. Also, affirm and applaud. And more importantly than that is a good biblical term called blessing. Apparently, the job of the parent is to bless the child, which is to give this 100% unconditional sense of I love you. You are my child. You are, and I'm going to give you my family. That in the Bible talks about putting the blessing on the child. I think we need to do more of that, both verbally, non-verbally, but to bless them, to let them know that it isn't just we're applauding they did well, but we're applauding who they are. We're blessing them as a growing person. We're letting them know that they're loved, they're valuable, and not alone. So, my son and his wife got married, and they started their married life together in Ecuador for 3.5 months, serving in a children's home. And my wife and I were just so proud of them. And so we read their notes, we affirmed, applauded, and then somewhere in the conversation we said, but we got to do more than that. And so we decided to suck it up and spend the money and flew down to see them in operation, and in essence to say to them, we are so proud of who you are as a couple, that this would be how you start this journey. And to say to my son, watching you become this man is just something that I could never describe. And a little touchy-feely kind of time, but it was there with my daughter. It was her art, and so all the family goes up and we celebrate with her. My youngest daughter was a figure skater. Oh my gosh, all the hours in old, kind of cold skating rinks. And then we went to college, and she'd never done cross country, but she walked out and she said to the coach, and said, "Can I try out for the cross country team?" He said, "Have you ever run cross country in high school?" "No, but I think I need to be on a team and I want to do something, so could I do that?" He said, "Sure." So she tried out for the cross country team at college. And so we went to Wisconsin, flew down there, and saw her in one of her meets, because she was, by the way, let's face it, live, I have to be nice, but she wasn't great. I wasn't applauding her because she was great. She was beating somebody there. That was good. That's when I took a picture, But see, affirming and applauding is about the performance. Blessing is about them. So to be able to say to her, I'm just so proud of the fact that you just decided to do that. And show that character trait of, I'm going to do this. This is good for me, and I'm going to go into my comfort zone, out of my comfort zone. So we do that. Another one before we go is, this is not just because we're a church, develop a shared spiritual life. The job of the family is not just to get kids to go to religious activities. That's a button to building theology. Our job is to get them their butt in a religious building for a while, and we're good to go. It's to develop a shared spiritual life. Only have it spelled T-I-M-E. Whatever that looks like. All of you might do it different. The church can be a partner to that. That's where you have to put words. You have to talk about life and faith sometimes. And I know that's not always easy. But to talk about it. To develop some routines and rituals around faith and life. Whether it's around the dining room table or bedtime rituals or morning rituals. And I hear stories of people who use morning rituals. One guy had a whiteboard, and his job was twice a week to change, put a Bible verse or a quote or something they had to stop before they went to school and read it and talk about it. And, he said it worked, everybody tries something different. When your kids are younger, if you do have power, you remember you have more power control when you're younger. If you have younger kids, work on these right away now. If you haven't and your youngest is 13, it's tough. But some routine, which the shorter the better, if you're adding new ones. But routines and rituals that begin to talk about life and faith in a way that makes sense. And again, the church can be a resource for you. What might work? What's an idea? And then serving together is also a way to share spiritual life. Studies show that when parents and children serve together, not just serve independently, there's some things that happen. So we do some things once or twice a year with our family. Some of our grown kids. Now with our grandkids, we go and do Feed My Starving Children because we want to instill that idea of service together as part of faith and life. And along with that, number 6 is build a family identity. Environment, shared spiritual life. Here's the key word: is identity. We used to say a lot about the McLuhan way of doing things. It's the way things are. What McLuhan's do. It's spelled T-I-M-E, by the way. It's the only way you build an identity. And then you create family experiences, some kind of family experiences. Again, if you say in our family, Paul Lake Resort, we have a shared experience over the life of our family that all of us have an image of what that talks about, what that means, memories, road trips, etc. You have to decide, again, by the time you're done, what would be some of those experiences that would shape their kids, your kids, and you in terms of how you understand your family experience together. And again, there's that word routines and rituals. Around holidays, around first day of school, Facebook is filled with all the people who do their first day of school thing. Whatever it is, find your own way to do routines and rituals that help describe this is how this family is going to pull this off. Real quick, give an example. My daughter, Randy, was dating Jeremy, and she said, Dad, she called us up and said, Dad, Mom, we got to do Christmas cookies. I'm like, why not? Because Jeremy, I just found this out, Jeremy knows nothing about Christmas cookies. It's like in a pagan family. I don't know what's going on at this point. Because his family did not have, but our family had this, as I pull a picture out, of every Christmas, around the counter, we made Christmas cookies and decorated them and, all that. This was not a memory that I had remembered, but the minute she was dating, realized that poor guy didn't know anything. So what did we have to do? We had to bring Jeremy over and show him what Christmas cookies like, because that's the way you're supposed to do Christmas. Don't ever think that these experiences have to be big or significant. That's the big lie. They just have to be something that's your story, part of your story. It can be small, it can be insignificant. We do, real quick, we do flags for birthdays. My wife is half Swedish, half Norwegian. I'm all Irish. So on Sue's birthday, we do a Swedish Norwegian flag. For me, it's Irish. And then Mandy and Ryan have all 3. So all the neighbors know this because we have pictures of them from year 1 to every year. They get the picture in front of the flags. It's because of what we do. And so Brie was feeling particularly Irish that year, so she wanted the Irish flag with her. But it's just part of the story. We have another one that I can't tell you about, but that's life-changing right there. And that's part of the family identity, routines, rituals, and remember the family values. Core family, what are they? What would you say is fill in your family name? This is what we do here. This is what we believe here. This is why we do that. This is important to us. Just think about it, because your job is to both teach and model those values in and out all the time, because that's part of your family identity. Does that mean guaranteed that they're going to become that and live that way and look like you and agree with everything? No. You can only do what you can do, and then the rest is up to all kinds of factors. Last thing here is admit your need for help. Remember I said, I'm trained, tired, scared. You can't do it alone. You're not supposed to do it alone. Admit the need for help. It's okay. Church can be a resource. Church can be a resource. So, remember your purpose, remember your vision, be intentional, build your core values, fight the culture, love unconditionally. There's a whole lot here. I know that I'm throwing a lot. I want to be done in the next 3 minutes. I want to respect your time. But I want to give you a final, two final words. One is this, something is better than nothing. I say this as a parent, I say it as a grandparent, I say it as a youth worker, I say it as a pastor. Something is better than nothing. I often have felt that I just wasn't doing enough. And what I was doing was fairly boringly ordinary and insignificant, I know that. But I've watched over the life of my family and of my own personal life, and the impact of things that have happened is that often I'm surprised when people come back and say that conversation or that one thing shaped this or helped me with that, or was exactly what I needed at that moment. Why do I still keep doing these things? Is because I'm never quite sure. And same with parenting, you're never quite sure. You got to keep committed to being strategic, but don't assume that it has to be huge. It's something is always better than nothing. And then the last word I would say to you before you go back, is don't give up. I don't know if some of you are sitting here and you're tired. I mean, really tired. Maybe just because you got 4 of them and you're just really tired. Or maybe it's a particular child that's pushing all the buttons for you and you're just tired. Or maybe it's just that you really do feel like you don't know what you're doing and you're tired and feel like you don't know what you're doing. Or you're a single parent and you just don't know where to turn. Don't give up. Turn to somebody here. Turn to this resource. Turn to a neighbor. Turn to God. And just say, I can't give up. I can't give up. And the reason why I say that is because in my church small group that said those 3 words to my wife and I, when it was parenting difficult years for us, particularly with Mandy.